Thank you all for coming. My name is Ed Murphy. I am the Senior General Manager of Ovation Hollywood, formerly known as Hollywood and Highland. If you haven't seen what we've done with the place in the last couple of years, please come check it out. It's an extremely different place, very modern, very clean, and we're just getting started. I am also the Vice Chair of the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. I do the Tourism Committee, and they asked me to moderate this panel, so I was very happy to. This is the Procurement panel, how to capture opportunities to better manage local supply chains, what has worked for these leaders in rebuilding and reimagining their procurement practices. So I'd like to introduce my panel. We'll start right here. This is Mr. Don Jacinto. He's the Managing Director of the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel. Next to him is Bob Cuthbertson. He's the Director of Supply Chain Management for Children's Hospital, which I think makes him the resident expert on this panel. And next to him is Albert Sun, who's the Executive Vice President of Global Strategy and Operations of the MBS Group. And we'll get into what everybody does. Some of you might not be as familiar with, the MBS as you are with the Roosevelt, but all three gentlemen are doing amazing things in the community and are buying a lot of stuff. So we can talk about that. I think Ted Sarandos has kind of told us, we can just stop this whole panel right now and just, Ted's got the procurement solution, right? That's what I heard. So call Ted, get with Netflix. And I really want a hot dog. Anybody else? Richard kind of.
Oh, absolutely. That was good.
So it's been a rough couple of years, and I know you're all in here. We all experienced it one way or another. I hope everybody was healthy and everybody you knew was healthy, and continued, health. Part of the $100 million renovation that we've done, we bought a lot of stuff, and we also repaired a lot of stuff that was just there. We have 19 elevators and 32 escalators. That's a lot of moving parts. So a lot of those parts are not made around here. So we have, if you walk by and you see an escalator down at our place, the part is probably being manufactured or it's on a ship coming somewhere from overseas. That has been one of the great challenges that we've gone through, but everything along the way, for us it has been a challenge. Luckily, we're pretty much on time, which is pretty great for a project of that scope, but it certainly hasn't been easy. But we're almost done. We're like 99% done. So come see us. Let's just get into it with the panel. We've got a few questions here, and this is my favorite one, and we're going to start with this. And I think that maybe Albert threw this one. We were talking about potential questions, so I'm going to let him answer, and everybody else can kind of fall in. What keeps you up at night? Relative to procurement, of course, and the supply chain.
Okay. There's lots of other things that would keep me up.
I don't want you're on a binging, Stranger Things.
Right. Well, kind of the first level set. So MBS Group runs movie studios and rents lighting and grip equipment for film and television production. Well, we're operate in 6 different countries. We are able to service productions across about 90 cities globally. Last year, we supported about 500 productions, movie, television productions on a global scale. So we have really two types of businesses. One is the studio operations, rental of sound stages and offices, production space. And the other one is essentially the lighting and grip equipment, those big King Kong lights that you would see that light up a set and all the accoutrements associated with that. What keeps us up at night, me and my team, is really focusing on 2 things, right? The first one is really trying to manage I'll call it the price to cost squeeze, right? We're trying to hold a line in terms of maintaining the prices that are our long-term tenants or people who rent equipment from us. We don't want to increase the rates for them. At the same time, inflationary pressures have been driving up our costs, shipping, labor, all of those kinds of things. I mean, if I kind of recall back in March of 2021 is when we kind of was sort of coming out of the pandemic, and we all of a sudden, 5 months later, we see shipping containers going from a cost of $1,500 shipping to $20,000. That kept us up at night, right? How do we get this equipment in an affordable way to be able to deploy and rent out to our customers who are producing massive amounts of content, Netflix, Amazon, Apple, and so forth. The second really other element that keeps us up at night is how do we balance the need to invest in sustainable programs, right? The sustainability, environmental sustainability, social sustainability programs takes a lot of effort and time, and on top of that, investment in new technologies, electronic trucks and those electric trucks and all those kinds of things. How do we manage that while balancing the need to achieve our financial obligations on a monthly, quarterly basis? So those are the two tensions that we continue to wrestle with as a team at MBS.
I think for us at the Hollywood Roosevelt, it's a historic hotel. It's been on Hollywood Boulevard and Orange since 1927. Can you hear me? I'm sorry. Let me just bring it closer. We have 300 rooms. We've got tons of meeting space and 6 different food and beverage outlets. And what keeps me up at night is just we've seen demand come roaring back. We're going to finish this month at 90% occupancy. Now that's really, really unbelievable because that's back to pre-pandemic business levels. And when I look at my business forecast for the remainder of the year, 2022 will finish just about 5% down to what we achieved in 2019. So what keeps me up at night is trying to keep up with that demand and the severe labor shortage that we continue to deal with. I've still got 30 to 40 open positions in various areas of the hotel, but fortunately, I've always taught my team to be very entrepreneurial because we're not part of a large chain where we have scale. It's always been about the relationships we have with our vendors who've come through for us over the last couple of years. They might have had to increase pricing by anywhere from 10 to 30%, or there might be a 2 or 3 month delay in getting product. But they've been really good to us because it's always been about the relationship that we've had with them. It's been very personal. We've always paid them on time. We've always treated them like partners.
So being a children's hospital, my industry is a little bit different, and what keeps me up at night right now is playing the game of supply chain whack-a-mole. Every day is a different challenge for us at CHLA, and the biggest fear that I have is not being able to provide something that a surgeon or a child needs to be able to be treated. And we've done an amazing job working with the clinicians, the physicians. We have had more substitutes than I've ever seen. I've been doing this for over 30 years, and the fact that yesterday you used this product, today you're going to use this product, it was kind of interesting. We have a very strong clinical preference, of course, which is good. So during the COVID period, when we were trying to get gloves, and we did get gloves, one of our nurse managers, so we're bringing in a substitute for the nitrile gloves that we use just on a daily basis. So we said, okay, we got this new glove coming in. And she said, well, we need to do a trial. And it's like, well, no, you don't quite understand. It's going to be this glove or it's going to be no glove. And so it really changed how we had to think about our business. But and we have been doing a decent job of getting what we need, but I still have that fear on a daily basis because of the shipping and because of the manufacturing, everything is so close. It used to be I'd order it, I would get a date when it was going to be delivered, and that would happen. And of course, that's all gone away right now.
Yeah, I as an example, one of our big capital projects for 2022 was to invest in new ice machines for all of the guest floors. For all of you that stayed in a hotel, you know that there are ice machines on the guest floors. And we ordered them back in March of 2022, so just 6 months ago. And I don't know when they're going to come, so sometime next year possibly.
So that's kind of the macro, right? I think we're all kind of experience the same issues, the same fears and the same concerns. So let's unpack this a little bit. let's see. So continue. So what are like the biggest supply chain issues that you're seeing right now? Like mine, I said was elevators and escalators.
Yeah, it's just been delays, right? So where something would take, if it was coming from overseas, anywhere from 1 to 2 months, now takes 4 to 6 months. And so we've just had to pivot, and if we've had to source something out locally, we've done that. We're not in a position where we can say to a guest who's paying over $300 a night, we ran out of beef, we can't service your room, we can't put soap in your room, and so we've had to be creative. And oftentimes we've sourced things locally, and our preference is to go local. Our chefs will go to a farmer's market, support farmers markets, and so we just had to pivot and be creative.
I think for us, the biggest thing is the unknown and not knowing when and if something's coming in. We had a problem getting just saline flushes that the nurses use after giving medications. So we were told, we don't know when, you'll get them, we don't know when. So we actually had to go through a process of training the nurses to go back to the old-fashioned ways, where you have to draw up the flush and do it that way. So we did all that training, and then the next day we got 6 pallets of them in. So it's just the unknown. You just can't judge like you used to be able to.
Yeah, it's very similar in terms of the long lead times. When I focus about the lighting and grip equipment, I mean, we're talking about really advanced lighting, right? LED lights that have software, hardware, programming, and all those kinds of things, advanced microchips inside. Our suppliers themselves are struggling with trying to get the components out of the manufacturers who are often overseas. And by the way, it's not all in Asia. A lot of the high-tech lighting that we see being used on the sets are actually in Europe. Those manufacturers are in Europe. So we've had to be very innovative in terms of like trying to find ways to help our supply chain address their own difficulties. And one of the things that we've looked at is we've actually implemented is actually what we call co-planning, where we share our forecasts 3 months out as best as we can in terms of high probability shows that are going to come online, provide that forecast and an estimation in terms of the types of equipment that might be needed, so that they themselves can use that demand forecast to plan for and forward buy the chipsets that they may need, so that they can go do that in a timely manner. In addition to that, we clearly always aggregating all of our spend. We have 30 some odd locations globally. And so we centralize demand planning, pull all of that demand together, and use that as a way to concentrate our volume to allow the suppliers, the strategic suppliers, to go and make those purchases for volumes of inventory without being exposed, that they'll hold up inventory for orders that don't materialize. And one other area, just to kind of touch on, is indirect OpEx, operating expense type things, consumables, little things like that. We started exploring more the use of group purchasing organizations, which I'm sure you're familiar with in the medical industry and maybe in the hotel industry, is that these group purchasing organizations combine 2,500 other companies to leverage their purchasing power for buying things like printers, IT hardware, janitorial supplies, those kinds of things, as a means to drive savings and assure supply. So on the OpEx side, we've been pursuing more purchases through a GPO.
So everybody's having a delay, right? That's something we've all seen. You go to the grocery store and, you might not find bacon or a whole chicken, it's everybody's. And I hear this from our tenants at Ovation all the time. We've got the restaurants who say, I was paying $3 a pound for something and now it's $15 a pound. And puts things into perspective for me. I'm like, pay your rent. And and they're like, well, here's what our costs are. I'm like, wow, that's it's shocking. So because availability is, it doesn't really pertain to us because a lot of stuff we're doing is new at Ovation. You have your certain amount of attic stock or whatever, but have you all found lately, due to supply limitations or the delays in receiving stuff, do you find yourself maybe putting more on your shelves? Are you the guys going to Costco and bought all the toilet paper. So, I mean, how has that changed what you keep on your shelves?
Yeah, I think fortunately we haven't had to hoard toilet paper or any products that the guests uses in the rooms. But, I think it goes back to really the relationship we built with our vendors over the years and the loyalty they have towards us and the long-term relationship. In that if they weren't not able to get something within a reasonable amount of time, they worked really hard to source it from another place and always came through for us. I mean, not once did I ever have to skimp on anything or 86 something from the menu. Now, I haven't been able to, my main restaurant hasn't been able to open 7 days a week for dinner service. We're open 5 days a week. But that's simply because there's a severe labor shortage. We can't find enough skilled kitchen staff to open 7 days a week.
So for us, during COVID, the state thought it would be good to put in a law that said that we would have to, hospitals would need to carry 90 days of PPE on site. It sounds good in theory, but it becomes a huge storage problem for us. We've done it because we're required to do it. So that's been taken care of. For other things, I wish I could hoard some of them. We're on allocation for so many things from our vendors. When you look at syringes, my main vendor is saying, okay, Bob, we'll give you 75% of your allocation for syringes. Well, which 25% of my patients aren't going to get injections, right? So even though we do use the GPOs and have, decent relationships with vendors that depended too much on maybe foreign countries and not enough manufacturing here, we're actually having to look to source that from other places as well, because the GPO, while they're good, the allocation piece has affected them as well. So we beg, borrow, and steal from other hospitals, and it's just been an interesting time.
Stocking the shelves for us would be huge racks of lighting equipment. So to some extent we are stocking the shelves, but it's very much a strategic decision informed with, I'll call it historical data. We look at utilization to see what's coming, what has been in highest use and highest demand. And we also take a look at the projections, as I had indicated, in terms of what's going to be required in the future, 3 months out, as much certainty as we can. But we work only with a small set of strategic suppliers to do that kind of thing, because it takes a lot of effort, right? Trying to work together to figure out what is it that I will need, that you need to plan for, because your timeline impacts my lead time, and so forth. In addition to that, in terms of stocking the shelves, we're also trying very hard to find alternate substitutes, as you had mentioned. Equally qualified, capable equipment that the creative folks, the lighting directors and so forth would be willing to use as a substitute should there be a shortage of the primary choice that they have.
You mentioned, and we talked a little bit price, and I mentioned price. One thing I will say that we, at Ovation, we are kind of like the public restroom for Hollywood. 15, 20 million visitors a year, and they all get to come in, use our restrooms for free. So we stock a lot of toilet paper. And all of a sudden, then there was nobody. Standing on Hollywood Boulevard during the pandemic and looking each way, and there was not a single person and not a single car. So, for a couple of years, we didn't go through a lot of toilet paper. But we're certainly happy to go through a lot now. It's great to see the return. We talked a little bit about the price of beef, and how's pricing affect you? I mean, you can't, double your prices in a restaurant, or healthcare is kind of a different model, but studios, it's a competitive environment. How has the inflation and the increase in price affected your businesses?
We adopted the approach that we would not pass on those costs to our guests. In fact, we did the very opposite. We tried to create an environment for our guests that felt normal, where they can enjoy actually more amenities than they had before. So when we couldn't do any indoor entertainment, we converted our parking lot, for example, into an outdoor movie theater, drive-in movie theater. We did live comedy shows. We would do sound baths out at our pool. We would continue with yoga classes, although they had to be socially distanced. So we tried to keep everything as normal as possible. And there was always that temptation to say, you know what, let's just bring the prices up here or there. But we didn't want to do that. We wanted guests to feel like this is normal and that there was still value in what they were paying for. And it's paid off for us because, as I mentioned, our business has come roaring back, and it's just keeping up with that demand that's been a challenge. But I think we're in a good place now, and I think that we're excited that guests are traveling back to LA and staying at the Roosevelt.
So for us, during COVID, the PPE, of course, went sky high, and it actually normalized, and it's come back down now. But what we're getting hit with are fuel surcharges, per delivery charges, just things that we didn't have before because the vendors, the distributors, their labor costs are going up, their fuel costs are going up, and you get it, but you don't like it, and certainly the supplies that we buy, we're going to pay what we need to pay to get them to treat the patients.
We've been very deliberate at MBS Group to avoid passing on the costs, and we've been successful for, I'd say, for the last year and a half. I think, though, the dialogue is starting to turn towards, as long as this inflation rate continues to be persistent, that some of that cost will have to be passed on. We've been very deliberate in terms of trying to manage our expenditures, cost control internally, so that we don't erode our margins and not meet our commitments to our investors, our private equity investors. But it's not an easy solution. It is a daily dialogue with the executive team and constantly thinking in terms of what are customers asking from us. Are they under pressure too? What can we pass on? And oftentimes it comes down on a case-by-case basis, on a show-by-show basis. What is their budget? What are they looking for? Would they be willing to take something as a substitute piece of equipment that will actually reduce their costs, et cetera, et cetera. So it's essentially working and problem solving on a one-on-one basis to just try to find a happy medium. Not an easy answer.
Absolutely. So actually, time is flying here. A lot of good information, and we could sit here and talk for days about this, right? But one of the things we want to do is we want to give you all a chance to ask some questions or some share experiences. We've only got a few minutes, but if anybody's got some questions or answers, let's start doing that now. Anyone? Yeah.
Yeah, just I don't know how to position that. I'm Thierry Weisenberger from the Canadian Council, head of the commercial program. So I'm curious about mitigating those costs, optimizing the supply. How much do you rely on outside the U.S. or outside California? I know that EDS has operational, will have operation, for instance, in Canada. That's probably part of the equation. But any thought? I mean, for the hospital in particular as well.
So yeah, we use the major GPOs, Vision for our GPO, and major medical distributors. So they did a lot outside the U.S. I mean, there's no doubt they did that. We're actually looking at that internally. I mean, we depended a lot on them, trusted them for years because for years there were no issues, So we are looking at that, and we're working with our community relations folks, and I'm very proud to say that we have just hired our first vendor diversity project specialist. She's here. Audrey Chang is in the audience. So we want to diversify more, and we want to learn from you folks how we can work together better.
Is nearshoring a consideration for you? A certain supply that comes from overseas.
So I think, it's going to continue. I have no choice for a while, right? I mean that's while the vendors like our main distributor are starting to do more of the PPE, more of the stuff stateside. But the reality of it is the cost goes up when we do that, right? And so balancing that is a mask that was 2 cents is now 25. So that's a concern. But I think it's something that we all have to work together to figure out what's the right mix and how we make it work, so I can get the supplies I need and not dependent on a China shutdown or anything like that.
I think we have time for one more question. Yeah.
Looking into your crystal balls, when do you think these supply chain challenges are going to be normal? And will these supply chains be better because of this economic experience and evolution?
I think yes, better. I do think because we already see the vendors and the GPOs and whatnot working to make it better. I don't know if it will be less expensive, but I think it will be better. There'll be more duplicative in place so that if I can't get it here, I'll get it here. From what we're being told and what we're seeing, is this is probably going to be an issue for us through 2023.
I think we'll continue to see that.
Yeah, I think we feel like we've navigated the worst and that it can only get better from here, as long as there are no other world events that change things. We, have adapted to this somewhat new normal, so.
I would say that the rate of improvement is going to vary depending on the type of industry and the type of products or services you're procuring. I'd say from a services perspective, back to your question also in terms of the local amount of local work that we're going to be looking at to support our businesses are going to be focused more around short lead time services like repairs, local repair of our equipment as opposed to sending it all the way back to wherever it originated from and all those kinds of things. That, in addition to that, then requires essentially an accumulation of capability, right? You have to have local technicians who are well-versed in electronics and being able to, solder wires, if you want to say that, or stuff, new circuit boards and those kinds of things. When it comes to original equipment manufacturing, I think right now we're still pretty dependent on overseas OEMs who are leading the technology, the innovation on some of the products that are in highest demand.
So it's interesting. During COVID, the mask issue we actually dealt with fairly quickly, and how we dealt with it was not through our GPO because they had restrictions. How we dealt with it was a marketing company that we use for making the little widgets that the marketing team gives out had a strong presence in China. So we were able to use their presence in China to get masks that weren't counterfeit, they were real masks, because there was a huge counterfeit market. And it was really interesting because there was a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff that had to be done. I mean, the government wanted to know that, because we get a lot of masks, that they were really coming to a hospital, but you think, who would have thought that the marketing company would be the vendor that would be able to get us masks when the med-surg companies couldn't?
All right, guys, we've run out of time. I'm just going to wrap up with a couple comments. First of all, I neglected, and I apologize to Don. Don is my co-chair of the tourism committee. He hosted the meeting last month at the Roosevelt Hotel. We'll be hosting it in September at Ovation, so if you want to come by, there'll be free drinks, and we can show you what we did with the place, and we can talk about some tourism issues. Second, and most importantly, part of this economic development summit and the reason what the Chamber of Commerce does for you as the members is it pulls us together. We share our stories, we laugh, we cry, we learn. So this hopefully has kind of given you a little bit more perspective, maybe got you thinking about some things, maybe you've met some people. Today we're just talking about the problems. Together we're going to find the solutions. So please reach out to us. Utilize the chamber, connect with each other, and we're going to get through this together because Hollywood's future is brighter than ever. Thank you all for coming.